Hi everyone, welcome back to Java 1 for All. Continuing the java.time package, now we are going to talk about the local date time. It is pretty straightforward. As you know, we have the local date, local time, and local date time is not very different. The only difference is that it will work with both date and time together. So create a new class, local date time test01, PSVM, press tab, and well, the same way you did with local time and local date time, you can create in different ways. So for example, we have local date time now, or you could send local date time off, and you have to pass everything. Basically, you can send both local date and local time together to have them merged in one object, local date time object, or you can send like the values individually. So for this one, we're just going to create through now because we already know how to work with off. Out on the Shift F10, and you basically have the local date merged with local time, and we're going to talk about this T in the next video. So pretty straightforward. There is not much I can tell you about this class that you didn't see before. You have the same utility methods. Basically, you have get minute, get day of month, like all methods that you have in local date and local time. You also have available in local date time through the utility methods, and either including the get temporal field, where you can just send a cron unit with whatever you want to get back from this object. So now that you know basically how the local date time works, there is a couple interesting things. For example, you could parse a date and a time pretty straightforward in a better way than what we had before. So for example, let's say that we have a local date. Before, you knew that every time you were trying to parse, you had a checked exception. That's one thing that they changed. Now, if you want to parse, you have two options, either sending the text or this datetime formatter. We are going to check this later. But now the text, if you send the text exactly like you had on the toString, like I said, if you have coming from the database, it would be something like this: 2022, month, August, and a day 6. I can introduce this date, and I can do exactly the same, but instead of date, I have a local time. Local time, but the time now will be like 9:45:21 a.m. I can print both of them. We have date and time. Okay, we had zero, missing 10 here, so the date could not be parsed. Even though you don't have the checked exception, as you can see, if you don't send a valid text, you will still get a exception. The difference is that now the date time parse exception extends date time exception, that extends runtime exception. So it's a runtime exception. Control Shift F10. Now we have the time correctly. So as you know, the local date time, you have options to create from now, from .parse, or for example, sending a local date time .off and this date and time. It will put together, let's call this local date time 1. So south local date time 1. So we basically merge them together, but there are different ways to also merge. So for example, I can say I have this date and I would like to have this date at a specific time, and this is overloaded. We have options sending hour, minute, and second and nanosecond separately using offset time or a local time. So basically I can get this time that I have here and add to my local date, and then we will have local date time that we'll call LDT2. Be careful because the same as local date, all methods in the local date time, local date, and local time, they are immutable. Every time you change something, you are creating a new object. Control D. I can also do the same. I have a time, but now I I would like to have the time at a specific date. For this one, you don't have another option. You can only send the date. So you cannot send the date like this. I will just get this date here, and I will print both of them. Ctrl D, 2 and 3. And all of them, they are returning a local date time. Have exactly the same values here, but 3 different objects. Again, every time you use this add time, it's creating a new object. That's why if you do not have a reference variable, this data will be lost. So basically that's it about the local date time and local time. The classes are pretty straightforward. I would advise you to take a look into the documentation if you ever need something more, let's say, specific. In general, whatever I'm covering here will solve like 70%, 75% of the problems you may face in the beginning of your career. So guys, that's it. Let's continue with more Java time in the next video. See you there. Bye.